men and being hunted himself by the British. Ramzan was taken into a great native grandee's service and given authority over 5 villages. My authority extended over these people to summons them to my presence, to make them stand or sit. I dressed well, rode my pony, and had 2 sepoys, a scribe, and a village guard to attend me. During 3 years I used to pay each village a monthly visit, and no one suspected that I was a Thug. The chief man used to wait on me to transact business, and as I passed along, old and young made their salaam to me. And yet, during that very 3 years he got leave of absence, to attend a wedding, and instead went off on a thugging lark with 6 other thugs, and hunted the highway for 15 days, with satisfactory results. Afterwards he held a great office under a Rajah. There he had 10 miles of country under his command, and a military guard of 15 men, with authority to call out 2,000 more upon occasion. But the British got on his track, and they crowded him so that he had to give himself up. See what a figure he was when he was gotten up for style, and had all his things on. I was fully armed, a sword, shield, pistols, a matchlock musket, and a flint gun, for I was fond of being thus arrayed, and when so armed feared not though 40 men stood before me. He gave himself up, and proudly proclaimed himself a Thug. Then, by request, he agreed to betray his friend and pal, Buhram, a Thug with the most tremendous record in India. I went to the house where Buhram slept, often has he led our gangs. I woke him, he knew me well, and came outside to me. It was a cold night, so under pretense of warming myself, but in reality to have light for his seizure by the guards, I lighted some straw and made a blaze. We were warming our hands. The guards drew around us. I said to them, "This is Buhram," and he was seized just as a cat seizes a mouse. Then Buhram said, "I am a Thug. My father was a Thug. My grandfather was a Thug, and I have thugged with many." So spoke the mighty hunter, the mightiest of the mighty, the Gordon Cumming of his day. Not much regret noticeable in it. "Having planted a bullet in the shoulder bone of an elephant, and caused the agonized creature to lean for support against a tree, I proceeded to brew some coffee. Having refreshed myself, taking observations of the elephant's spasms and writhings between the sips, I resolved to make experiments on vulnerable points, and approaching very near, I fired several bullets at different parts of his enormous skull. He only acknowledged the shots by a salaam-like movement of his trunk, with the point of which he gently touched the wounds with a striking and peculiar action. Surprised and shocked to find that I was only prolonging the suffering of the noble beast, which bore its trials with such dignified composure, I resolved to finish the proceeding with all possible despatch, and accordingly opened fire upon him from the left side. Aiming at the shoulder, I fired 6 shots with the 2-grooved rifle, which must have eventually proved mortal, after which I fired 6 shots at the same part with the Dutch 6-pounder. Large tears now trickled down from his eyes, which he slowly shut and opened. His colossal frame shivered convulsively, and, falling on his side, he expired. Gordon Cumming. So many, many times this official report leaves one's curiosity unsatisfied. For instance, here is a little paragraph out of the record of a certain band of 193 thugs, which has that defect. "Fell in with Lal Singh Subadar and his family, consisting of 9 persons. Traveled with them 2 days, and the third put them all to death except the 2 children, little boys of 1½ years old." There it stops. What did they do with those poor little fellows? What was their subsequent history? Did they purpose training them up as thugs? How could they take care of such little creatures on a march which stretched over several months? No one seems to have cared to ask any questions about the babies. But I do wish I knew. One would be apt to imagine that the thugs were utterly callous, utterly destitute of human feelings, heartless toward their own families as well as toward other people's. But this was not so. Like all other Indians, they had a passionate love for their kin. A shrewd British officer who knew the Indian character took that characteristic into account in laying his plans for the capture of Eugene Sue's famous Feringhea. He found out Feringhea's hiding place, and sent a guard by night to seize him, but the squad was awkward and he got away. However, they got the rest of the family, the mother, wife, child, and brother, and brought them to the officer at Jubulpore. The officer did not fret, but bided his time. "I knew Feringhea would not go far while links so dear to him were in my hands." He was right. Feringhea knew all the danger he was running by staying in the neighborhood, still he could not tear himself away. The officer found that he divided his time between 5 villages, where he had relatives and friends who could get news for him from his family in Jubulpore jail, and that he never slept 2 consecutive nights in the same village. The officer traced out his several haunts, then pounced upon all the 5 villages on the one night and at the same hour, and got his man. Another example of family affection: a little while previously to the capture of Feringhea's family, the British officer had captured Feringhea's foster brother, leader of a gang of 10, and had tried the 11 and condemned them to be hanged. Feringhea's captured family arrived at the jail the day before the execution was to take place. The foster brother, Jurhu, entreated to be allowed to see the aged mother and the others. The prayer was granted, and this is what took place. It is the British officer who speaks. "In the morning, just before going to the scaffold, the interview took place before me. He fell at the old woman's feet and begged that she would relieve him from the obligations of the milk with which she had nourished him from infancy, as he was about to die before he could fulfill any of them. She placed her hands on his head, and he knelt, and she said she forgave him all, and bid him die like a man." If a capable artist should make a picture of it, it would be full of dignity and solemnity and pathos, and it could touch you. You would imagine it to be anything but what it was. There is reverence there, and tenderness, and gratefulness, and compassion, and resignation, and fortitude, and self-respect, and no sense of disgrace, no thought of dishonor. Everything is there that goes to make a noble parting, and give it a moving grace and beauty and dignity. And yet one of these people is a thug, and the other a mother of thugs. The incongruities of our human nature seem to reach their limit here. I wish to make note of one curious thing while I think of it. One of the very commonest remarks to be found in this bewildering array of thug confessions is this: "Strangled him and threw him in a well." In one case they threw 16 into a well, and they had thrown others in the same well before. It makes a body thirsty to read about it. And there is another very curious thing. The bands of thugs had private graveyards. They did not like to kill and bury at random, here and there and everywhere. They preferred to wait, and toll the victims along, and get to one of their regular burying places, Beals, if they could. In the little kingdom of Oude, which was about half as big as Ireland and about as big as the state of Maine, they had 274 Beals. They were scattered along 1,400 miles of road, at an average of only 5 miles apart, and the British government traced out and located each and every one of them and set them down on the map. The Oude bands seldom went out of their own country, but they did a thriving business within its borders. So did outside bands who came in and helped. Some of the thug leaders of Oude were noted for their successful careers. Each of 4 of them confessed to above 300 murders, another to nearly 400, our friend Ramzan to 604. He is the one who got leave of absence to attend a wedding and went thugging instead, and he is also the one who betrayed Buram to the British. But the biggest records of all were the murder lists of Futi Khan and Buram. Futi Khan's number is smaller than Ramzan's, but he is placed at the head because his average is the best in Oude thug history per year of service. His slaughter was 508 men in 20 years, and he was still a young man when the British stopped his industry. Buram's list was 931 murders, but it took him 40 years. His average was 1 man and nearly all of another man per month for 40 years, but Futteh Khan's average was 2 men and a little of another man per month during his 20 years of usefulness.